Hey, so this is a quick introduction to APA, and I'm going to show you a lot of stuff, and all of these examples are from writing down the basics. So there's going to be a lot of text. I'm not reading it all to you because it's your assignment to read it, and so that's what you need to do. But I want to point out one, how does it work overall, and what are some basic things you need to pay attention to when you read or you're looking up things for how to do this, okay? Now, one thing I want to remind you of, and it says it in the text of writing down the basics, is that in your essays, just remember nothing should be in bold. Okay, where I put bold in the examples, it's because I'm showing you, oh, look here, here's how we do this, and then here's where it is. You can see it in the citation here. So just remember that no bold, no bold, no bold. Okay, and let's take a look at just kind of where to find things and access things in writing down the basics. So in writing down the basics, you can access it in two different places, or two different ways. One is by going to the bookmarks. So you can go to the bookmarks and like here's APA, and when you click on the drop downs, there's the, not MLA. Go back to APA. There's the in-text citations. So I've done headings in here and bookmarks. So you can just go and say, okay, I've got an indirect source. I've got a video or audio. Oh, wait, references, video, audio, that kind of thing. Or else, of course, you can access the table of contents. And remember that you can, even though they don't look like it, you should be able to click and go there. So that's, writing down the basics. Use it, and then I'll give you a few other places that will help you out too once we get to the end. Okay, so what do you need to know more than anything? More than anything for in-text citations for APA, remember this. Author date, location. 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 Author date, author. Did you say author date? Did you get it? Author date, location. If you remember that, you know what to put in those in-text citations. So remember that. Remember that the location generally doesn't go in your sentence. So page numbers, timestamps, if it's just numbers like page 5, if you're doing a video and you're giving 5 minutes and 32 seconds, that stuff goes at the end in the parentheses always. The author date, well, it depends because you can have style, okay? And then the sentences should always be readable without the parentheses. And that's really important. That will help you figure out, wait, does this go in parentheses or not? Because if you take, parentheses inherently, just the rules of punctuation with parentheses, says I should be able to take this out of my sentence and it should make sense. Yes, it will be missing these extra details, but the sentence should flow grammatically. So we should be able to do that. So let's take a look at a couple of examples, okay? Wait, come on. Click, click. There we go. So here we go. Watch this. According to Shapiro, boom! 2015, did you see that? Author date. The minute you write down an author's name in your sentence, and APA only last names. If you have more than one author with the same last name, then there's a way to deal with that. Look it up, go check out how to do that. But it's rare. But the minute you give somebody's last name, boom, right there with it, you get that location. I should have written author, location. Date, author date, right? So Shapiro, boom, right after that with the parentheses, we have the date. And all we put is the year. We may have the day, the month, and the year, but this is our shortcut. Okay, so just a little bit. So boom, there's our author date. According to Shapiro, 2015, the time to stand up for yourself and others is always now. And then boom, there's our location. And notice we have that P period and 7, that's page 7. And then we've got that period after it. So that right after that, it's keeping it with that sentence. Okay? So there we go. There's our author. There's our date. There's our location. Just like that. So that's one way to do it. But let's check it without the stuff in the parentheses. According to Shapiro, the time to stand up for yourself and others is always now. See, we know that it's okay to put those in parentheses because the sentence flows, but we got to have them in there. And that's the way you actually read these academic texts. Yeah, you're looking, oh, this was 2015. If you're looking at something in medicine or science or computers and it's from 1920, it doesn't mean it won't be valid, but you look at it in perspective of, well, that was 1920, right? Is this historical, foundational? Does it still work? Is it an amazing thing? So that's why APA always has that date there. It's saying, look, as a thinker, and especially in the sciences, you need to think about, when was this, right? So that date gives us that information. In the page 7, if we want to go read more of what Shapiro said about that, we go to the end, the references, find out what source it is, and then we can go look at page 7, find that quote right there, right? Find that quote on page 7 and read more of what he said. That's how it all works together. So that's one way. There are 3 basic ways to put our author, date, and location in there. So we can have the author's name in that signal phrase, attributive tag. Don't forget to put that in there. And then boom, location, and then have like the quote or the paraphrase, and then our location at the end. Author, date. We could actually put the year in there, and especially if you want to emphasize the year. In a 2015 study, Shapiro, so boom, there's our author and date, said, but this time we are making it part of our sentence. The time to stand up for yourself and others is always now. And of course, page number always in those parentheses. And so there you can see it works too. Or we can pack everything in at the end. In a recent study, one researcher said, the time to stand up for yourself and others is always now. And then we have Shapiro, and notice we have commas between all of these elements. Shapiro, comma, 2015, comma, page 7, and then we close it. And so the thing is yeah, it seems like it'd be easy just to kind of always throw everything at the end, but one, it bores your readers, right? If you're writing the same kind of sentence, it's like it's easy to write third grader sentences, comma, but we combine them with commas and other things so that our writing has a little finesse and style, and we sound like we're not still in third grade, right? So you want to kind of use those different ways of getting in that author, date, location to help give your writing style too, smooth it out in those ways. So those are the 3 basic ways to get that author, date, location in there. Everything else is just details of technical stuff. So for example, if you're doing a paraphrase, it would look the same way. Now, you want to make sure to cite all the sources that you quote, and if you use those direct quotes, put your quotation marks around it. If you're paraphrasing it, now paraphrasing means not summarizing the whole thing. So I'm not saying, look, here's the whole APA publication manual, and that's the official book of rules for this kind of stuff. Let me tell you what the whole thing says. No. Paraphrase means I'm going to tell you, look, here's page 39, and, maybe I'm just paraphrasing like these 3 or 4 sentences here at the top. Right, this little bit that I can point to page 39, or maybe the bottom of page 39 and the top of page 40. It's a small bit, okay? I'm still using their words. I still need to cite it on my references page. Now, this publication manual, which is the absolute official end-all and be-all of how to do this, says, although you are not required to provide page or paragraph number in citation for a paraphrase, you may include that should be 1. Oh, back, Kelly. In addition to the author and year, when it would help interested readers locate the relevant passage within a long or complex work. So it says you may do it. I want you to do it. So for my class, because APA gives instructors they always say, if your instructor says to, do it, okay? For my class, if you're doing a paraphrase, I want you to do that. If you go to the Writing Center, they're going to tell you you don't have to do in-text citation for paraphrases. You'll be like, yeah, generally, but Kelly said do it, so you do it, okay? For other teachers, you need to ask, because some of them will say no, and some of them will say yes. So you say, do you want in-text, you would always give the author and the date, right? It's all about the location. Would you give that location? And so that's up to the instructor. So that's one of those things you make sure and you ask, okay? Now, here we go. Check this out. Here's one thing I want to point out, too, is that here we have Hacker and Somners. According to Hacker and Somners, 2015. So author date, location, author date, and then boom, commas were not created to confuse people, but to keep parts of sentences from crashing into each other, page 287. And if you look at your writer's reference, Hacker and Somners, right? Whoops, wait, there they are. Okay, you'll find that idea on page 287. I've paraphrased it, I've put it into my own words. So that's an example of a paraphrase. Um, and here is one of those other ways that some experts maintain that commas were not created to confuse people. And so I put Hacker and Somners. Notice when I have more than one person in my sentence, here this is part of my sentence. I couldn't take it out. It's not in the parentheses. I'm going to use the word and, because that's my paper. I get to make it longer. In my citation, I use the ampersand. Okay, so symbol in the citation, it should be shorter. And one of the things to think about too that I mentioned when I said, you don't want to bore people. You want to have these different things. And really, this one, in a recent study, one researcher, and here some experts maintain, yeah, now and then you'll want to do that kind of thing, or you may have something like, statistics have shown where you're going to cite that source where you're going to have that author date location at the end, but the main point's really statistics, not where you got it. So, yeah, there's sometimes you skip putting the names in the sentences, but by and large, you should do that. Not to do it now and then is really rude. Think of it this way. If I gave you a group assignment and there are 5 people in your group, and I only gave one person credit, or none of you credit, I'm like, and then on top of that, yeah, or I gave you credit, but, didn't really put it in the grade book, that's more like what it'd be, right? I mean, the paper's like the grade book, right? I'd be like, yeah, I gave you credit, or whatever. So really acknowledging people using their names is important. It shows respect. It shows that, you're not ashamed for people to really kind of notice these are the people I'm citing. This is where my information comes from. So it's kind of another level of credibility and trustworthiness. But there are times when you do want to say, you might just you're focusing more on the statistics or the fact or what's being said. So you will put the, author date location in at the end. But that should probably be one of the rare times to do it. So, for a summary of the whole work, all you would give would be the author's name and the date, the author date, okay? And if your teacher says you don't need to give location for paraphrases, this is exactly what you do. So just Shapiro talks about, or there, Shapiro's 2015 work focuses on. So you could put both parts in your sentence, or if it was just a statistic, it wouldn't be a statistic because then you'd want location because that's an exact thing. We could find 87. Statistics always make sure, and 87%, you're always going to find that on page 30 or whatever. Always give those. All right, if you have a source without page numbers, then you're going to use headings. You're going to count paragraph numbers. And I'm not going to go through and show you all this because there's just some nuances. It depends on, do you just have these paragraph numbers? Do you have headings? Do you have certain things? So as you read, just kind of look at that and pay close attention there. And there's also a section that talks about, like, at what point do you have to spell out Federal Bureau of Investigation, and at what point do you get to start saying FBI, right? And does that belong in, your text, or does it belong in the in-text citation? Well, you know what? I got the answers for you. They're all in your writing down the basics, right? So, or your writer's reference, and whatever we're using depending on the course. So make sure and use those sources, all right? And that's what that just says. Make sure you're familiar with it, and then that way, when you've read through it all, and yeah, you kind of read skim, but pay attention, take it in so that as you're, especially if you haven't done this before, if you take time and do that, then as you're writing and you're working on your paper, then you look it up, then you start using the reference books as what they are, reference books, right? And you refer to them. But it only helps, you're only going to refer to them fluidly if you know what's in them. So you need to give them that kind of good overall read first. So video or audio locations. So with those, you are going to give the timestamp. So for the beginning of the section you're quoting, you don't have to give, 5 minutes, 22 seconds through 5 minutes and 46 seconds. Just where does it start, okay? Give it in hours, minutes, and seconds. Put a colon between each section, and only give as much as you need. Like I don't have to put here. People often confuse the semicolon with the colon. They are not the same. I say that in the semicolons and colons video at 5 minutes and 22 seconds. Okay, that video does not go an hour long, so I don't need the 00 colon 05 colon 22. Right? Just start with whatever you have. If you have minutes, you start with minutes. If it's just seconds, seconds. Obviously, if we had hours, we would do hours. Okay. Um, and then when we have those long quotes, when we have long quotes in APA, MLA Chicago, there's a different way to deal with them. And what each of them consider long varies. In APA, a long quote is 40 words or more. So if you type it, you copy and paste it into your paper, whatever you're doing, you've got this quote and you highlight it and it's 40 words or more, then you're going to do that indent thing. So here you can see that we're indenting. So, like if this is our, 40 words or less. I'm sorry. We're not going to indent yet because this isn't 40 words right here. Notice we may be doing them more harm than good despite all the love that goes with it. But that's short. That goes in with our sentence, right? And so we have Tobbs, 2012, author date, Tobbs, boom. And then at the end, paragraph 8. Now, why we have paragraph and not section, that kind of thing, is, well, let me show you real quick. Actually, let me show you, let me find, where's that at? Okay, look over here. Oh, let me get rid of me. So like here, when we look at this, this is an article called Society Storyteller, How TV Creates the Myths by Which We Live. It's by George Gerbner. It's on the Center for Media Literacy website. So see, I'm starting to read for that citation, that information I'm going to need. 5 functions of television as myth. This is one of the sections, right? Here's another one, the need for media literacy, right? So if the rules talking about what do I do in terms of, how that works, have to do with, do we have section titles or not? And is this a formal research study or is it just, a more casual article? So in that case, so this case, this is clearly an article that doesn't have sections. So we're just counting the paragraphs. Here's an example of that long quote. So here we go. I've decided, you know what? I want to quote all these words. They're that important. Be careful with these. Really, like I did research for you. And I had a lot of teachers put like big red X's on my papers and say too long. Okay? If you put long quotes in one, you don't want them to take up more than definitely a third of the page. Of course, it is double spaced too, so it might do that. If it gets longer than that, really rethink it. Okay? And even with that, ask yourself, could I paraphrase some of this and then give some quote and then talk about it and then give some more of the quote? Could I break it up and kind of make it, well, one, you're making the paper longer too. Okay? But teachers really don't like these in general. The idea is, if you're doing those big long quotes, you might as well just say, look, here's all the articles I read. Why don't you read them? Now, the point is you read them and integrate them to show you've thought about them and you're responding to them. You're thinking about them. What do you think about them? And remember that. That's really important because it's not just do research or put sources in here, but put them in context and explain what you think about them. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree? Do you see it that way? How does this have an effect? Why does it matter? Right? So be really careful with these. Very, very careful. But once in a while, somebody says the words just right, and it's like, oh man, you nailed it. And you really want to give the whole thing. So if you decide it's worth it to take that risk, that teacher may put a big red X over that big long quote and say, no, too long, don't do that. Then you think about it, and if you decide that's worth it, then this is how you do it. You're going to take that. It's more than 40 words. You're going to enter, and notice I've indented, scooted it over here. We don't put the quote marks in because that indentation, scooting it over there, wait, where is it? It's there. Scooting it over there is that indentation actually shows, hey, this is a quote. And what do quote marks do? They show, hey, this is a quote. So we don't need to say this is a quote, this is a quote, right? One or the other. So less than 40 words, in your paper with the quote marks. More than, or well, 40 words or more, boom, indent, no quote marks. Okay? Um, and then you can see the big difference you can see is that we've got tabs and the author date, and then here's our location. The only difference in punctuation is here we put the period and then that punctuation. In the other one, when it's in with our sentence, we actually put that period afterwards because it's like mushed in with our sentences. So we're just kind of keeping it there and saying it goes with a theory. I have no basis for believing that. Okay. So that's the basics of your in-text citation. Author, date, location. Author, date, location, author, date, location, and most importantly, author, date, location. Author, date, location. You got it? Say it again. Say it again. Make your mama wondering what you're doing. Make your kids wonder what you're doing. Say it again. Okay. Author, date, location. As you read samples, look at it, just see how people do it. Okay. All right. References page. At the end, you got to have that whole list of here's what people do. So again, the instructions, you read through them, get it in your mind, kind of how they work. Read the stuff, just like with the in-text, read the little paragraphs before it, kind of look at the sample, read the stuff after it. Those bulleted lists are real important. And then as you start doing it, you'll go back and look up, oh, I've got a book, I've got a magazine, I've got whatever, right? I have sections, I don't have sections. I've got page numbers, I don't have page numbers. I've got dates, I don't have a date. So we'll cover all of that, okay? Sorry, I was getting choked up. I had to pause there, and then I realized I really need to finish this in these 4 minutes. So if you're still here with me, good on you. Let's see if I can do it. All right, so list all the sources you used in your essay. It's titled References, reference, if you only use one. Part of your paper, as much as your head is part of your body, right? If you leave it off, people can call. Even if you did that off your date location, they can say, you know what, that's plagiarism. So make sure it's there. Any of these places in the writer's reference where it has important details, bulleted lists, like I said, read those, okay? There's important stuff there. Those are like I'm saying, look, boom, boom, boom. Make sure you pay attention to this. If you have a specific date, like so you have the month, day, year, give as much of the date in the reference as you have. In our text, shortcut, all we want is year. Doesn't matter. So if we're citing Faye over there, then in the reference, we're just going to have Faye, boom, 2004. I mean, in the text, right? On our reference, we'll have 2004, July 19. Hey, that's my birthday, right? So for all of them, do that. If you don't have a date, then use ND. That stands for no date. And it would go your author date location. When you put date, ND would go in there as well. Okay, that shows no dummy. I'm not a dummy. I didn't forget it, right? No date. So whether it's on your references page or in the in-text, it's going to be no date. Use that ND. Make sure, here's one thing that's kind of tricky, is that with like a magazine, you're asked to put in the number and the volume and the number or issue. A lot of magazines, some of them, it's technically, you've got volume and then you've got issue. So volume is usually kind of what year was it published, right? So maybe this is the 4th year, so it's the 4th volume. And the issue is like which one during that year. Maybe it's the 3rd magazine that's been published in that 4th year. But it's actually issue number is the technical full formal title for it. Some places just call it issue, some call it number, some call it issue number. So that's all the same. That's just all I'm telling you with that. And so here's an example. You can see there's the volume, right? Let me see. Yep, volume, because it's outside of the parentheses, and this is in parentheses. So there's the volume, and there's the issue. Okay? Now, if you have something online, one thing to remember is only give that base URL. So this is from a magazine. It's online. And real quick, how do you tell that difference between an online website versus a magazine? Well, one thing you do is sometimes you just ask the internet. So, for example, here's this article called Breaking Bad's Walter White is the Ultimate Absent Father. And I see it says New York up here, so I'm thinking like New York Post. I think that's their kind of font and everything. I just asked the internet, and thank God, look, I didn't even spell correctly. I love Google. Um, what is the online publication Vulture? Vulture, the cultural and entertainment site for New York was magazine. So it's site, right? When I ask, oh, um, what is melting asphalt? Well, one of the things that will come out is this is actually a blog. So I would look up how do you cite a blog post. But really, just that what is this online publication? And it'll end up, oh, here, this one. I wanted to do this one. What is the online publication Adweek? I don't know where my, oh, Adweek. Look, you fix this so many things for me. Is a U.S. based trade publication covering the business of advertising, print and online. So what this is, and whenever I go down here, look, it says um, there's some place down here in the other one when I actually spelled things correctly that said it's a magazine. Okay, so you may have to look a couple of them down, and it said magazine. Blah, blah. Magazine. So, use that. Like I know a lot of them because, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and like teaching citation and doing citation. You're not going to know them all, right? You'll start to know the ones you actually pay attention to that maybe are common or that are in your field. So, if you're looking at something, don't just assume it's a website. You might want to take the time and say, what is the online publication, whatever it is. And if you spell it close enough, Google will help you. Okay? So here, with this one, New England Review, when I did the search for it, it told me earlier it's a literary journal. So, all right, I'm eating into my 4 minutes. Okay. A web page, a couple of things for me to point out. You can read this, what goes in there. Make sure and read through these samples because they tell you like author. And have you noticed yet? We've just got last names and then initials, and then boom, the date. That's how almost every citation on the references page starts out. Title of article or page in italics. Do not capitalize major words other than the first word in the title. So, like, even my example is telling you, don't forget this part, right? Name of website. So here's that ad one. The ads don't work this way. I'm melting asphalt. So this is by Kevin Smiler. So Smiler K. We know his first name, but APA says I don't care. Just give me the initial. We know the date, and this one when we look at it, um, right here, I had to, and this is the thing, you got to read the website, not just the words, but the website. Here's the title, here's who it's by, and notice this one didn't have the date at the top. Don't assume it doesn't have a date. When I go down to the bottom, originally published, there's a date right there. So one of the key things is not just, actually read the site, the actual thing you're looking at. And then it has melting asphalt, and then the URL. Notice it doesn't say retrieved or retrieved from. A lot of site generators haven't updated for the new APA, which came out in late 2019. And so they're giving you the wrong instructions. There's no problem. Use those site generators. They're helpful. But then double check them, okay? Because if they're wrong, they're wrong. It's your grade. You don't get to tell me, but Word did it this way, or the library or the Purdue OWL did it this way. I'm going to be like, you needed to be using the up-to-date ones. Okay, so use the the generators, citation generators, if you want. The library database will give you here's how to cite this in APA, but then double check it. Okay, because if they haven't updated things, it's your grade, not their fault. Okay. Here, if no publication date is given, remember that just that ND, don't forget that again. But one thing I did want to point out with websites is here's from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and we've got the date and the title of the article, and notice it comes from the CDC website. Well, back here, we put melting asphalt. We put the name of the website because, we haven't mentioned it so far. Here, the author and the name of the website are the same. So you can skip the retrieved from, right? So sometimes, skip putting the website in. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. If you look at online citations, I guess I get rid of them. Notice when you do, oh, here, retrieved from, and then it's just the URL of the basic thing, versus this one is, we don't even need that um, thing there. And then there's another one, oh, here, National Geographic. This is a PDF version or print, either way. We don't need that. Okay, so that's why you really want to stop and read like the little paragraph that's above it, and the bulleted list is below it. A YouTube video. Now, anytime you have oh, I thought that was in there. Okay, anytime you have something that is different, that if a source is not print, you got to tell people what it is. So if it's print, that's just what we expect people to use in research papers. But once we get to video, audio, images, whatever it is, you're going to put after the title of it, right there, you're going to put in brackets, the square parentheses, what it is, video. So if it's a video, if it's an MP3, if it's illustration, whatever it is, you put it in the graffiti on the bathroom wall, you'd write bathroom graffiti. Just like that, exactly like that. But you wouldn't put it in bold, right? Remember that, okay? And remember when you notice we're doing this hanging indent, and the writing down the basics also talks about that and tells you how to do that. But sometimes your URLs will wrap, and sometimes they'll leave this gap. The new APA says don't fix that gap, just leave it. It drives me crazy, but I'll get over it. And then another thing to notice about the new APA is they do TED Talks two different ways. One is the TED Talk on YouTube, and you cite it one way, or is the TED Talk on the actual TED Talk page, and if so, you cite it another way. So that's something to keep in mind with if you're going to use TED Talks with the new APA. A couple of other things. In your paper, you always follow the general conventions for titles. So if we have a short title, right, the title of a story, an article, the song, right? These are the little things that are in something else, right? A short story is in a book or on a web page or something like that. Like usually we don't just find them floating around on their own, okay? It's in one of these books. There are books with short stories back there, right? An album or I can't reach. There's CDs up there, okay? And they have many songs on them. Each of them is an album, and it has a song on it. So the song is the little thing. We put its title in quotes. The short story is the little thing. We put its title in quotes. That book there, that whole album there, that's the big thing. I'm going to read that whole book. I'm going to listen to that whole album. That's going to take me longer than just reading the story, just listening to the one song. So that goes in italics if I'm writing and underlining. That's the way it is in MLA, Chicago, almost all styles. That's the general rule for how you treat titles. So quote marks for little things, italics for the big things. That's the same in APA. It's at the end in the references where they go and do whatever the hell they want. Like sometimes books will be in italics, and then other times book titles won't be. Sometimes article titles are in italics, and sometimes like they're never in quotes. I don't know. They do whatever. So just remember, in your text, in your essay, you treat that title correctly. On the references page, you can get mad and frustrated at APA like I used to do, until I realized, you know what? I'm just wasting my time, and I'd rather my life be happier, and I'm not going to sit around getting ticked off at APA, right? And I just look it up. I read the instructions, follow the instructions. That's exactly how you do this stuff. That's how I do this stuff. I don't try to memorize it. When I grade it, I get out the instructions. I get out the writing down the basics where I've translated those in here. I get out the APA manual, right? The official one. And if you're going into a field, psychology, the sciences, nursing that requires this, I really do suggest you buy this. They won't update again for like 7, 8 years because, they only do it up once in a while. How to cite TikTok is in here now. We're good to go, okay? And this is like maybe $20, $30. It's not, wait a year or so and you can buy a used one. Somebody had to buy for their college class for like 10, 5 or $10. And especially if you're getting a degree in nursing or some of the medical stuff. Doctors do different things, but I don't know what you'll do in college. Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth having it because then you can look at that. The APA style blog is also a really good source for things that are weird. Like they'll have, you know, how do you alphabetize things in your references, like that have weird things like numbers or whatever, right? And then, of course, there's the Purdue OWL, Santa Fe College, and the Online Writing Center. So the Purdue OWL, and I'll put these links in the description below. Their APA page, notice they have the 7th and the 6th. I'm saying, look, we're going to use the 7th, okay? Has, look, basics of in-text, and there are different ways you treat different authors, and I've got some of them in writing down the basics, and some of them aren't. Like if you have more than 3 authors, can you take, there's shortcuts you can take. Do you have to write out 20 authors' names in a citation? What do you do? There are ways to take shortcuts, things like that. Um, Audio, visual material, other things like that. This Santa Fe College page is really good, and if you're taking 1302, their book examples are good, and they have anthologies in there. So, and then of course the Online Writing Center, and of course you can click here, and right now they're closed. So if I click connect, that'll take us right to a Blackboard Collaborate, and you can get a writing tutor right then, and these are the hours for that. And of course, I should have, by the time you watch this, sent out the Trans Mountain hours, where you can send your paper in, and of course you can do it through here too. Um, so all of those are good places for you to get help. And then of course there's me. And remember, you're writing and doing this. Try it. Give it your best, because until you write it down, I can't say, yeah, that's right, cool. Oh wait, no, that's wrong. Here, let me show you how to get it right. And then you're drafting, right? Remember, you're drafting before you're turning in the final, right? So do that drafting, throw it out there. You could be like, I did my best, whatever, right? Or you could be like, hey, this made sense for me. Let's think like APA. I don't know, right? And then throw it out there, and then let me help you get better. Because remember, my job is to help you get better for all those other teachers out there, and that's what we want. So give me a chance to do my job. Sorry this took so long. If you're still here, thanks for sticking with me, and that's all I got for now. So let me know if you have questions, and take care.